Christmas night 1996, 6-year-old pageant star JonBenet Ramsey carried to bed by her dad in a silent house. But in the dark, a familiar as a deadly touch, a muffled cry silenced by a homemade garrote. By morning, John Ramsey, eerily calm, discovers her body in the damp basement, next to a ransom note scrawled in handwriting eerily like his own. Nearly 29 years later, at CrimeCon 2025, John revealed fresh DNA testing on the garrote knots and unexamined evidence by CBI labs pushing genetic genealogy to unmask the killer, per CNN and Daily Mail reports. Boulder PD's Chief Redfern vows leads won't stop. But if the DNA doesn't point to an intruder, was the monster inside all along? Dare to piece the first clue. The case starts here or ends if you choose. In the dim glow of a Boulder morning on December 26, 1996, the Ramsey home, once alive with holiday lights and pageant laughter, now pulsed with fractured hush. Its rooms a labyrinth of Shatter City where tinsel dangled like accusations amid unwrapped gifts. Chaos reigned as officers milled, radios crackling. Friends contaminating the scene with unchecked steps, no perimeter secured, just frantic unraveling after Patsy's 911 call, her voice cracking over a 3-page note demanding John's bonus in intimate script. Descending the clammy basement with fleet white, John Ramsey pushed open the wine cellar latch, flashlight slicing shadows to unveil JonBenet, sprawled on cold concrete, shrouded in a stained white blanket. Wrists bound by twisted cord, duct tape sealing her lips over porcelain features frozen in rictus. An improvised device, a painted handle, twisted around another cord dug into her throat's hollow, leaving purplish petechia across eyes and scalp veins, evidence of a snuffed struggle. Subtler horrors, intimate intrusion traces on undergarments, a blunt fracture on her head from an unseen blow. John's arms encircled her chilled weight with mechanical tenderness, lifting toward light, each step masking his grip's tremor, yet his gaze averted in a flicker, betraying dodge over grief or guilt's shadow, voice steady amid the gasp. Patsy's wail shattered tension, pulling friends into sobs as media flashes pierced outside, turning cataclysm to spectacle. Air thick with dried blood and strawberry shampoo, will this horror ever yield its phantom? In the fractured dawn of that Boulder home, John Ramsey stood amid the holiday wreckage, his mind a storm of unspoken fractures as he processed the abrupt end to his daughter's life, a loss that pierced like an unforeseen shadow, stealing the light from their family's core. He had risen early, slipping into the bathroom to cleanse away the night's residue, water cascading over his skin in a ritual of composure. Emerging in contrasted sharply with Patsy's disheveled state, her makeup streaked from tears, her clothes rumpled from sleepless vigil. This deliberate grooming hinted at an inner need for control, a facade erected against the chaos unfolding, where every glance from arriving officers felt like a probe into hidden corners of his psyche. As the house buzzed with initial confusion following the emergency call, John vanished for nearly 90 minutes. Retreating perhaps to the upper floors or a quiet alcove, time unaccounted for in the timeline that investigators would later scrutinize, a gap that fueled whispers of orchestration rather than mere grief. In those solitary moments, his thoughts likely wrestled with the raw ache of paternal devastation, memories flooding in of JonBenet's vibrant performances, her tiny hands clutching pageant trophies, now reduced to a still form discovered in the dim cellar below. Yet intertwined with this sorrow lurked a quieter dread, a fear that some veiled truth might surface amid the scrutiny, prompting actions to shield vulnerabilities from prying eyes. He moved through the morning with measured steps, directing searches while his expression remained stoic, a Navy Han discipline masking the turmoil where love for his child clashed against self-preservation instincts. When he finally descended with companion to that forgotten storage space, the flashlight's beam revealed the heartbreaking scene. The body arranged in a way that suggested careful placement, evoking questions about prior knowledge or involvement. Lifting her chilled weight, John's grip tightened with a mix of tenderness and resolve, his averted gaze in that instant betraying layers of complexity beyond simple mourning. Returning upstairs, he placed her on the living room floor, allowing the detective to examine, but his composure held firm, even as Patsy's cries echoed, amplifying the emotional chasm between them. This contrast in their presentations, his polished exterior versus her raw unraveling, invited forensic speculation on psychological undercurrents, perhaps a subconscious effort to distance himself from the event's immediacy. As the day wore on, with media vans clustering outside and friends offering hollow comforts, John's mind might have replayed the sequence, balancing the profound void left by his daughter's absence against the peril of revelations that could dismantle their world. Investigators noted his cooperative demeanor, yet the missing interval lingered as a puzzle piece, suggesting time spent contemplating next moves or erasing traces. Decades later, with advanced testing on unidentified evidence renewing debates, one wonders if that morning's solitude concealed a father's desperate bid to protect remnants of innocence, or something far more intricate in the web of family secrets. In the shadowed underbelly of the Ramsey residence, where the air hung heavy with the scent of pine from a toppled Christmas tree and the metallic whisper of disturbed dust, Boulder officers their initial sweep like novices in a labyrinth of privilege, their flashlights skimming surfaces without piercing the deeper recesses. Arriving mere minutes after Patsy's frantic 5:52 a.m. plea, these responders undertrained for the sprawl of a 7,000-square-foot man, alert as a straightforward abduction, cordoning off only the girl's bedroom while allowing a parade of supporters to trample potential traces in the foyer and kitchen. No yellow kip sealed the perimeter, no forensic techs dusted for prints on every knob or crevice. Their cursory patrol overlooked the basement's wine cellar door, a nondescript portal tucked behind boiler pipes and forgotten crates, its latch rusted and unyielding under hasty grips, dismissed perhaps as mere storage in the frenzy of a presumed ransom plot. This oversight stemmed from inexperience in Boulder's force, more accustomed to petty thefts than high-stakes homicides, coupled with the chaos of unchecked visitors, whose footprints muddied fibers and whose breaths contaminated the ether, rendering the scene a forensic sieve from the outset. As noon crept toward 1 o'clock, with the house echoing the hollow tick of a grandfather clock and the muffled sobs of gathered kin, Detective Linda Arndt, stationed as lead that afternoon, issued a directive born of desperation, rather than protocol: enlist John Ramsey, Leet White to calm the premises anew, their familiarity a supposed asset in the ticking void of silence from the fictional abductors. John's descent then unfolded with eerie precision, his hand unerring on that very latch the badges had bypassed hours prior, swinging wide the barrier to reveal the 6-year-old's form curled in repose on chilled concrete, shrouded in a favored blanket now marred by the indelible stains of violation. The efficiency stunned observers, where professionals had glanced and passed. This father navigated straight to concealment, his beam cutting through gloom to illuminate the tragic tableau: wrists, secured by knotted cordage, adhesive residue sealing silence pleas, and the neck's tender expanse marred by the cruel cinch of an ad hoc restraint, all layered atop cranial fractures from an antecedent impact. Forensic retrospectives later dissected this anomaly. The room's obscurity demanded deliberate intent to locate, its position yielding no accidental stumble, especially for one whose earlier wanderings that morning, those unlogged 90 minutes of solitude, might have etched subconscious maps or outright reconnaissance into his stride. Yet this swift unveiling carried undercurrents of calculated restraint, John's demeanor a mosaic of paternal anguish veiled by executive poise, his earlier ablutions and crisp ensemble a stark foil to Patsy's raw disarray, suggesting not mere mourning but a prelude to narrative control. Investigators pondered the disparity. Did familial intuition guide him unerringly, or did prior acquaintance with the horror whispered in witness accounts of premature disclosures to kin betray orchestration? The contrast amplified suspicions, his unhesitant breach of the overlooked threshold implying either uncanny prescience or intimate complicity, a thread that wove through deliberations and DNA dead ends alike. In the autopsy's cold ledger, traces of external intrusion mingled with domestic echoes, but the discovery's velocity lingered as the pivotal fracture, a moment where grief's veil thinned to expose potential artifice. Beneath the glittering facade of Boulder's elite enclaves, the Ramsey household embodied affluent detachment, its sprawling Tudor manse a testament to John Ramsey's ascent as CEO of Access Graphics, where corporate triumphs funded lavish pageants and holiday extravagances. On that fateful Boxing Day morning in 1996, responding officers encountered not a typical distress call but a scene buffered by social stature. Patrolmen, ill-equipped for such opulence, hesitated at the threshold, their protocol yielding to the family's poised insistence on normalcy amid crisis. This deference marked the inception of disparity, where wealth whispered exemptions into official ears, allowing initial inquiries to unfold without the ironclad barriers afforded to less privileged homes. As sunlight filtered through frost-laced windows, the absence of perimeter tape transformed the residence into an open forum for contamination. Friends and clergy streamed in unchecked, their footprints mingling with latent clues across polished floors and cluttered basements, while forensic protocols languished. Investigators later documented over a dozen unauthorized entries before any semblance of isolation, a lapse attributed to deference toward the grieving elite. John's executive network, including swift attorney consultations, further insulated the space, turning potential evidence into echoes lost in familial bustle. This leniency contrasted sharply with standard procedures in modest neighborhoods, where swift lockdowns preserve integrity from the outset. Statistics underscore the systemic tilt, revealing that roughly 80% of child fatalities under 5 involve known relatives, per analysis from federal data spanning decades. Yet in the Ramsey saga, early probes veered from domestic scrutiny, influenced by the family's polished narrative. Boulder authorities, navigating uncharted homicide terrain, prioritized external threats over intimate bonds, a pivot that diluted focus on household dynamics and prolonged ambiguity. Media frenzy amplified this evasion, peddling the intruder hypothesis as primetime spectacle to captivate audiences and inflate ratings. Tabloids splashed sensational portraits of shadowy outsiders, sidelining statistical probabilities for dramatic allure, much like profit-driven narratives that eclipse familial culpability in similar tragedies. This selective amplification not only sensationalized grief, but entrenched public bias against objective inquiry. Echoes resonate in the 2007 vanishing of Madeleine McCann, where her affluent British parents, vacationing in Portugal, received analogous indulgences from authorities overwhelmed by international scrutiny. Portuguese police, mirroring Boulder's missteps, permitted scene access to supporters and delayed comprehensive searches, while media orbits fixated on exotic abductors, ignoring domestic inconsistencies despite comparable perpetrator patterns. Both instances highlight how socioeconomic shields deflect rigorous examination, fostering unresolved voids. Under the twinkling canopy of holiday lights at the White family's Boulder residence on Christmas evening 1996, Patsy Ramsey watched her herder radiate pure joy, her small frame enveloped in a crimson velvet dress that caught the glow of candles like embers in a hearth. Laughter echoed through rooms adorned with garlands and silver bells as JonBenet mingled with other children, her pageant train poised drawing admiring glances from adults sipping mulled wine. Patsy felt a swell of maternal pride, mixed with the subtle fatigue of the season's whirl. Her own ensemble, an elegant sweater set that blended seamlessly into the festive crowd. Conversations flowed about upcoming vacations, with the Ramseys mentioning their early flight to Michigan the next day, yet an undercurrent of warmth enveloped the gathering, making time slip away unnoticed. As the clock neared 10 o'clock, the family bid farewells amid hugs and promises of New Year's toasts, piling into their vehicle for the short drive home, through snow-dusted streets lined with illuminated displays. Patsy glanced back at her sleeping child in the rear seat, her cheeks flushed from the evening's excitement, while John navigated the quiet roads with steady hands on the wheel. Upon arrival at their grand house, he scooped the limp form into his arms, carrying her upstairs to the bedroom where moonlight filtered through lace curtains onto the canopy bed. Patsy followed closely, her steps soft on the carpeted stairs, pausing to tuck in the covers around the tiny figure before retreating to prepare for rest. In their master suite, Patsy slipped into a pristine nightgown of soft cotton, its pale hue a contrast to the vibrant hues of the day, then reached for the Ambien bottle on the nightstand to ensure a deep slumber ahead of the morning's travel. She swallowed the pill with a sip of water, feeling its promise of oblivion settle in as she dimmed the lamp, her mind replaying snippets of the party's cheer. John joined soon after, Haas falling into a hush broken only by the distant hum of a refrigerator downstairs, while their son Burke retired to his quarters nearby. Forensic timelines later dissected this sequence with precision, noting the pineapple fragments in the child's digestive system, undigested and fresh, indicating consumption well after the party's catered spread of crackers and fruit had ended. This detail pointed to a late-night snack, perhaps grabbed from the kitchen bowl that matched the residue on a spoon found there, raising questions about movements in the darkened home. Patsy maintained she had no recollection of such an interlude, her medication inducing rapid unconsciousness. Yet the evidence suggested the girl awoke or never fully settled, sharing that quiet bite with someone familiar in the wee hours. Comparisons to other cases, like the McCann disappearance where parental accounts clashed with physical traces, highlight how such discrepancies fuel endless debate. As the investigation unfurled through the late 1990s, forensic experts zeroed in on a seemingly innocuous detail from the Ramsey kitchen: a half-eaten bowl of pineapple, its contents mirroring the undigested fragments unearthed during the autopsy on JonBenet's small frame, placing the last meal mere hours before tragedy struck. This discovery, emerging in 1997 lab reports, painted a timeline of nocturnal activity, suggesting the child stirred after bedtime, perhaps drawn downstairs by familial routine or unrest. Latent prints lifted from the bowl's glossy surface yielded partial matches, one aligning tentatively with young Burke's digits, the 9-year-old brother whose own room lay mere steps away. Yet cross-contamination loomed as a confound, since John had handled kitchenware earlier that evening, his adult ridges overlapping in the shared domestic space. Over ensuing decades, this artifact became a linchpin in evidentiary debates, its implications rippling through grand jury sessions and media trials, where defenders invoked household normalcy to blunt accusations of internal foul play, while skeptics highlighted the anomaly against parental claims of uninterrupted slumber. By mid-2025, Boulder authorities reignited scrutiny on this relic and kindred relics, dispatching dozens of preserved items, including the contested vessel, to cutting-edge labs for re-examination under advanced genetic protocols. District Attorney's Office collaborations, spurred by persistent family advocacy, aim to extract touch DNA from microscopic residues, potentially isolating foreign contributors amid the familial overlay. John's public pleas amplified the push, framing these tests as a beacon toward exoneration or revelation, while officials confirmed ongoing analysis without premature disclosures. The process unfolding in sterile chambers, where spectrometers hummed over fibers and swabs, bridging past oversights with modern precision to potentially rewrite the narrative's unresolved chapters. Patsy's anguish deepened the human toll, her bond with the lost girl fracturing into perpetual shadow after that dawn's horror, where maternal instincts clashed against investigative glare. She navigated interviews with composed facade, yet private journals later revealed a hollowing grief that eroded her vitality, culminating in a 2006 ovarian malignancy diagnosis that claimed a life at 49, leaving John to shoulder solitary remembrance amid lingering doubts. This progression underscored the emotional wreckage, where initial denial morphed into defiant innocence campaigns, her absence amplifying the void in a family portrait forever incomplete. Child beauty contests, like those JonBenet graced, cast a spotlight on societal undercurrents, where sequins and spotlights masked premature objectification, heightening vulnerabilities to predatory advances. Such arenas, blending innocence with adult gazes, correlated with elevated exposure risks, as evidenced by federal surveys indicating 1 in 6 American females endures intimate violation prior to adulthood. This statistic, drawn from longitudinal studies, illuminated broader perils, urging reflection on cultural norms that normalize early performance pressures, potentially inviting exploitation under guise of celebration. In the velvet shroud of that post-midnight hour, long after the Christmas lights had dimmed in the Ramsey home, a shadow stirred through the upstairs hallway. Its footsteps muffled on the plush carpet leading to the child's bedroom, where innocence lay tucked beneath layers of lace and dreams. The door creaked open with deliberate quiet, revealing the small figure nestled in her canopy bed, her golden curls fanned across the pillow like a halo caught in moonlight filtering through frosted panes. A familiar presence approached, whispers slicing the silence like a blade through fabric, promising games or secrets to coax awakening from slumber's grasp. Resistance flared in tiny limbs, a sudden scuffle echoing faintly against the walls, culminating in a forceful impact that shattered fragile bone beneath the scalp, sending shockwaves through the delicate frame. In the ensuing panic, a makeshift cord tightened around the tender neck, its fibers biting into skin with unrelenting pressure, while an object from the lower level, a slender tool meant for artistry, inflicted fresh in hidden places, leaving trails of violation that autopsy lights would later expose in stark detail. Pain surged in waves, a child's muffled cries absorbed by the house's vast emptiness, her world narrowing to the dim glow of a bedside lamp, and the overwhelming weight of betrayal from within the sanctuary she trusted most. This reconstructed scene, drawn from forensic markers like recent tissue damage and embedded particles, painted a narrative of intimate harm escalating to fatal consequences, where trust dissolved into terror under the cover of familial bonds. Shifting timelines to the immediate aftermath, pathologists convened on December 27, 1996, their instruments probing the chilled form on the steel table, cataloging acute intrusions in private areas alongside older signs of repeated interference, such as eroded barriers and chronic inflammation noted in prior medical visits spanning 27 pediatric checks. Expert Cyril Wett, dissecting the report with clinical precision, highlighted patterns of ongoing exposure, suggesting a history of hidden encroachments that predated the tragic night, his analysis weaving threads of long-term vulnerability into the fabric of the case. Fast-forwarding through decades of stalled probes, by 2025, John himself championed advanced genetic tracing on key artifacts like the restraining device and the intrusive implement, collaborating with labs to apply familial matching techniques that could unmask unknown profiles lingering in trace samples. Meanwhile, the daughter of deceased Detective Lou Smith inherited her father's mantle, poring over archived files and advocating for renewed scrutiny, her efforts breathing fresh momentum into a quest that spanned generations, blending personal legacy with cutting-edge science to challenge the cold case's inertia. Yet amid these pursuits, a puzzling fiber clung to the evidentiary puzzle. Strands from John's clothing adhered to sensitive regions of the victim, defying explanations of innocent transfer since accounts placed him at a distance from the recovery site until the basement revelation. This anomaly raised whispers of direct involvement, prompting scrutiny over how such material migrated without acknowledged contact, fueling debates on concealed interactions that might explain the placement. The question lingered heavily in investigative circles: if patterns of prior interference existed, who within the household walls could have perpetuated them, especially given the enclosed world of privilege that shielded routines from outside eyes. Broadening the lens to societal undercurrents, statistics revealed that 9 out of 10 instances of such familial violations stemmed from known figures, often cloaked in authority or affection, turning homes into unseen battlegrounds where power imbalances amplified risks for the vulnerable. In this saga, the Ramseys' swift engagement of elite legal counsel erected barriers against thorough questioning, their resources affording protections that eluded average families, allowing narratives to pivot toward external threats while evading deeper familial dissections. This disparity echoed through public forums, where wealth not only bought silence but reshaped perceptions, leaving justice to navigate a tilted scale. As labs hummed with 2025 analyses, one pondered whether these genetic revelations might finally dismantle the fortress of doubt, or if the shadows of that December night would forever eclipse the truth. In the hushed pre-dawn of December 26, 1996, as frost etched patterns on the windows of the Ramsey residence, John navigated the dim kitchen with purposeful strides, his mind a whirlwind of calculated urgency amid the remnants of holiday cheer scattered across countertops. He selected a notepad from the family's own supplies, its pages pristine, under the faint glow of an overhead light, and began scripting a narrative designed to divert suspicion outward, each stroke of the pen embedding phrases that echoed cinematic tropes from films like Ransom, where abductors issued dire warnings in elaborate prose. The document sprawled across 2.5 sheets, demanding precisely $118,000, the exact sum of his recent corporate voted flourishes, such as foreign faction and small foreign faction, terms that forensic linguists would later dissect for their contrived formality, hinting at an author's intimate knowledge of the household's finances rather than a stranger's hasty scrawl. With the missive complete, he positioned it strategically on the spiral staircase, a stage prop in this unfolding drama, then descended to the basement's chill confines, concealing the tragic form in a seldom used alcove behind stacked boxes and holiday decor, ensuring temporary obscurity in the maze of storage that police would overlook in their initial haste. Patsy stirred from her medicated rest shortly thereafter, her bare feet padding across the cold floor as she discovered the staged epistle, its contents unleashing a cascade of terror that propelled her to the phone at 5:52 a.m., her voice fracturing over the line to emergency operators with reports of a vanished child and ominous demands. This call ignited the official response, drawing patrol cars to the curb where snow muffled their arrival. Yet the setup's intricacies, from the letter's placement to the hidden resting place, suggested a director's hand guiding the scene, transforming personal catastrophe into a puzzle that investigators would unravel over years. Forensic handwriting experts, poring over samples in sterile labs during the late 1990s, eliminated Patsy's script through comparative analysis of loops and slants, but shadows of doubt lingered on John's formations, where similarities in pressure and phrasing evoked questions of authorship, especially given the document's verbose style mirroring business correspondence rather than a frantic intruder's note. By 1999, a grand jury convened in secretive sessions, sifting through volumes of testimony and evidence that painted layers of familial complexity, ultimately voting to indict on charges related to endangerment and accessory roles, though the district attorney declined to pursue, citing insufficient proof to bridge gaps in the narrative. This decision left the proceedings sealed, their revelations trickling out in whispers that fueled public intrigue, while the family's legal fortifications repelled deeper probes into domestic dynamics. Fast-forwarding through archival dust to 2025, fresh scrutiny emerged from a spreadsheet compiled by the late homicide detective Mike Hammer, whose meticulous ledger, unearthed posthumously, cataloged potential figures of interest, systematically ruling out external entrants by cross-referencing alibis and timelines, thereby redirecting focus toward internal circles, where motives might intertwine with opportunity. Hammer's document, detailed in investigative circles, prioritized those with unaccounted access, emphasizing discrepancies in early statements that hinted at orchestrated elements rather than random invasion, a pivot that aligned with forensic revaluations. Amid these developments, John's appearance on CNN in January 2025 captured a man weathered by nearly 3 decades of scrutiny, his eyes reflecting a guarded optimism as he articulated hope in emerging genetic technologies, stating that pivotal meetings with Boulder authorities had greenlit retesting of key artifacts, potentially unveiling profiles long embedded in trace materials. Seated under studio lights that cast long shadows across his lined face, he spoke of faith in science's precision to exonerate lingering suspicions, his voice steady yet laced with the subtle cadence of rehearsed conviction, evoking the executive who once commanded boardrooms now pleading for closure in the court of public opinion. Beneath this facade, however, flickered remnants of ancient apprehensions, the kind that surface in fleeting pauses during recountings of that morning's chaos, where decisions made in solitude might resurface under laboratory glare, stirring echoes of vulnerability that no amount of advocacy could fully dispel. The interview unfolded like a confessional reel, with John describing collaborative efforts to apply genetic genealogy, his words painting a future where unidentified contributors might finally step from obscurity. Yet his posture, shoulders squared against invisible weights, betrayed an undercurrent of trepidation, as if the very tools he championed could unearth not just answers but uncomfortable truths buried in familial soil. This emotional duality resonated through the broadcast, blending paternal longing for vindication with the quiet specter of unresolved queries, where optimism clashed against the gravity of history's judgments. As cameras captured his measured gestures, viewers sensed the depth of a father's enduring vigil, tempered by the fear that revelations might redefine legacies rather than restore them. In the broader forensic mosaic, these moments highlighted the human cost woven into evidentiary threads, where John's public demeanor masked private reckonings with loss and legacy, his push for advanced analysis serving as both shield and sword in a battle against time's erosion. The 2025 updates, including re-examinations at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, promised to dissect dozens of preserved items with unprecedented sensitivity, potentially isolating sequences that could corroborate or contradict long-held theories. Yet amid this technological renaissance, the emotional landscape remained fraught, John's expressions during the dialogue revealing layers of resilience forged in adversity, even as subtle hesitations hinted at dormant anxieties over what might emerge from the genetic vault. This interplay of hope and hesitation underscored the saga's persistent pull, where each advancement peeled back veils on a night forever etched in collective memory, prompting reflections on justice's elusive path. As John concluded his remarks with a call for perseverance, the screen faded on a figure embodying both determination and doubt, leaving audiences to ponder the intricate dance between revelation and concealment. Will these latest forensic strides finally illuminate the obscured corners of that December dawn, or merely extend the enigma's shadow into another era? In the crisp chill of Boulder's winter dawn, Detective Steve Thomas arrived at the Ramsey residence, his boots crunching on the thin air of snow that blanketed the driveway like a deceptive veil over hidden truths. He stepped into a home still echoing with the remnants of holiday warmth, where twinkling lights cast elongated shadows across walls adorned with family portraits. From his vantage, the scene unfolded as a castoral blunders that would haunt the inquiry for decades. Officers had permitted a throng of friends and relatives to wander freely, their movements stirring dust particles that danced in the air like silent accomplices to contamination. No barriers restricted access to key areas, allowing fingerprints to overlap on doorknobs and fibers to transfer onto surfaces with unwitting ease. Thomas noted how the family remained clustered together, their conversations unchecked, enabling potential alignments of accounts before formal interviews could dissect inconsistencies. This lack of separation fostered an environment ripe for narrative cohesion, where subtle cues might pass unnoticed under the guise of collective grief. As Thomas surveyed the expansive layout, his forensic lens sharpened on the basement's dim recesses, where the discovery had shattered the morning's fragile calm. The space below held no overt markers of external breach, its windows bearing only the scars of prior disrepair, a grate slightly askew from neglect rather than fresh intrusion. Cobwebs clung to the frame like forgotten guardians, undisturbed by any hurried passage. He pondered the logistics of an outsider navigating this labyrinthine lower level, unfamiliar with its twists amid stacked boxes and holiday storage. How could someone foreign to the household pinpoint this secluded alcove without prior reconnaissance? Especially in the dead of night when silence amplified every creak. The absence of footprints in the fresh outdoor powder further eroded notions of forced arrival, suggesting entry points relied on unlocked portals or overlooked vulnerabilities within the structure itself. Delving deeper into evidentiary traces, Thomas fixated on the genetic material recovered from intimate garments, a minute sample of male origin that sparked debates over its implications. This touch residue, amplified through emerging amplification techniques, represented a fragile thread in the investigative fabric. Proponents of external involvement hailed it as proof of an unknown presence, a spectra signature left during the harm inflicted. Yet forensic scrutiny revealed its potential as mere artifact from manufacturing processes or casual transfers in daily life, where particles drift invisibly from one surface to another. Thomas weighed the context of collection, noting how the item's exposure to multiple handlers post-incident could introduce extraneous elements, blurring lines between deliberate deposit and accidental overlay. This ambiguity transformed the sample from definitive clue to interpretive puzzle, challenging assumptions about its role in reconstructing the sequence of events. Interwoven with these early oversights, the night's chronology resisted tidy explanations, as household routines clashed against the logic of covert navigation. The lower area's isolation demanded intimate awareness of the home's blueprint, from the spiral staircase's descent to the wine room's concealed latch. Without audible disturbances to alert occupants upstairs, Any visitor would require uncanny precision to evade detection while traversing familiar yet cluttered paths. Thomas reflected on reports of a flashlight left atop a counter, its placement hinting at utility in dim exploration rather than abandonment by a fleeing figure. Such details accumulated like layers of frost on a windowpane, obscuring clear views while inviting speculation on whether the harm stemmed from within the walls or slipped through unseen gaps. As the probe stretched into 1997, Thomas's frustration mounted, culminating in his departure from the force amid clashes over directional focus. He viewed the initial lapses as foundational cracks that widened with each passing month, allowing alternative narratives to take root. The failure to secure perimeters immediately after arrival mirrored broader systemic shortcomings in a department unaccustomed to such high-profile enigmas. His resignation letter articulated a belief that external pressures had swayed priorities, prioritizing harmony over rigorous pursuit. This pivot exposed vulnerabilities in protocol, where empathy for the afflicted sometimes overshadowed the imperative for isolation and preservation. Shifting to broader currents, media outlets like CNN and Fox amplified the unfolding drama, their cameras probing every angle with relentless intensity. Anchors dissected family statements in primetime segments, framing parental behaviors through lenses of suspicion that captivated national audiences. Reporters clustered outside the residence, their microphones thrusting forward like inquisitorial tools, capturing raw emotions that fueled nightly broadcasts. This coverage morphed personal tragedy into serialized spectacle, where speculative timelines dominated discussions, often prioritizing sensational angles over verified facts. The narrative push toward familial responsibility gained momentum through repeated airings of pageant footage, portraying the child as a symbol of excess that invited scrutiny on upbringing. Commentators on evening panels debated motives with dramatic flair, their voices rising in orchestrated tension that mirrored courtroom theatrics. Such portrayals influenced public sentiment, polling data reflecting a swell in convictions of internal causation despite evidentiary gaps. Viewers absorbed these interpretations as gospel, their opinions shaped by edited clips that omitted nuances, turning conjecture into perceived reality. Fox's opinion-driven slots further distorted the lens, with hosts invoking cultural critiques to bolster theories of domestic discord. They highlighted inconsistencies in parental recollections, replaying interviews with slowed-down emphasis on pauses that suggested evasion. This approach not only boosted ratings, but also pressured investigators, as leaked details fed the cycle of speculation. CNN's round-the-clock updates mirrored this fervor, their graphics flashing timelines that simplified complex forensics into digestible bites, often at the expense of accuracy. The ripple effects extended to community divides, where Boulder residents grappled with the influx of national attention that painted their town as a backdrop for intrigue. Social gatherings buzzed with whispered theories, influenced by broadcast narratives that humanized or vilified figures based on selective edits. This media orchestration eroded presumptions of innocence, as online forums echoed televised doubts, amplifying voices that demanded solutions aligned with popular scripts. In retrospect, these early missteps and amplified distortions forged a legacy of unresolved tension, where forensic remnants continue to tease at possibilities. Advances in genetic profiling have revisited those minute samples, yet ambiguities persist in distinguishing origin from happenstance. The home's layout, with its unbreached facades, still challenges external scenarios, prompting reevaluations of access and awareness. The media's role in shaping perceptions endures as a cautionary tale, reminding how narratives can outpace evidence in the quest for understanding. As the new millennium dawned, casting long shadows over the unresolved echoes of that Boulder Christmas, alternative explanations began to fracture the dominant suspicions surrounding the Ramsey family, pulling the narrative into a labyrinth of competing forensics and fractured timelines that kept the case alive in courtrooms and living rooms alike. By the early 2000s, the Burke did it hypothesis gained traction among investigators and armchair analysts, positing a tragic accident born of sibling rivalry. The 9-year-old boy, perhaps irritated by a midnight raid on the kitchen's fruit bowl, lashing out in a moment of unchecked frustration that escalated beyond control, only for parental instincts to scramble a cover-up in the haze of shock. This theory drew from behavioral profiles suggesting suppressed resentment toward his sister's spotlight-stealing routines, intertwined with physical traces like partial hand marks on domestic items. Yet it clashed against the precision of the staged elements downstairs, where bindings and notes implied adult orchestration rather than childish impulse. Counterarguments mounted swiftly, bolstered by a pivotal 2008 DNA advancement that isolated an unidentified male profile from the garments near the scene, prompting then District Attorney Mary Lacey to exonerate Patsy and Burke in a public letter, framing the material as irrefutable proof of an outsider's touch amid the night's violations. This shift redirected scrutiny toward phantom entrants, evoking images of a prowler slipping through overlooked vulnerabilities, but skeptics dissected the sample's scant quantity, arguing it could stem from secondary transfers during manufacturing or handling, not direct confrontation. Fast-forwarding through seasons of stalled inquiries, the 2024 series Cold Case, Who Killed JonBenet Ramsey reignited national fixation with its three-part dissection, premiering like a spectral revival on screens worldwide, where directors wove archival footage with fresh interviews to champion the intruder angle as the unyielding truth derailed by early blunders. The episodes pulsed with cinematic tension, replaying the home's dimly lit corridors under reenacted flashlight beams, emphasizing how mishandled genetics and media hysteria buried the external perpetrator beneath waves of familial doubt, featuring John's measured pleas for retesting as a clarion call against injustice. Critics praised its forensic deep dives into overlooked boot impressions and window disturbances, yet detractors noted a selective lens that glossed over domestic inconsistencies, turning the platform into a battleground where viewers debated the docuseries' bias toward vindication over exhaustive balance. This production not only amplified calls for advanced profiling but also highlighted the enduring rift between official clearances and pristine whispers of internal genesis, leaving audiences suspended in the fog of partial revelations. Juxtaposing the John Did It scenario against these rivals reveals stark forensic divergences, where the paternal involvement model hinges on patterns of concealed intimacy escalating to fatal mishap, contrasted by the accidental sibling narrative's emphasis on opportunistic chaos without premeditated malice, and the outsider intrude's reliance on anomalous biological markers to eclipse household origins. In the JDI framework, the father's executive detachment allegedly masked deeper compulsions, with the night's progression from routine tucking in to a reversing inflamed through autopsy indicators of recent tissue trauma paired with implement traces from lower-level supplies. Yet this crumbles under the 2008 genetic clearance that distances him from the core act. The BDI variant, conversely, leans on psychological evaluations of youthful volatility, suggesting a blow during a snack dispute followed by parental intervention to fabricate an abduction plot, but it falters against the sophistication of the two-page missive demanding precise financial figures, a detail beyond a child's grasp. The intruder proposition posits a calculated breach exploiting holiday laxity, yet it grapples with navigational improbabilities in the unfamiliar layout. A complicating thread emerges in the maternal fibers strands matching Patsy's sweater, embedded in the adhesive residue over the mouth, and ligature materials undermining pure external theories by implying her proximity during assembly, perhaps in a frantic bid to shield a loved one, or directly in the sequence, raising queries about why such intimate contact lingered if the harm originated solely from afar. This evidentiary tangle births a profound contradiction at the case's heart. While the unidentified sequence absolves the immediate circle from the acute incident's biological imprint, indicators of prolonged boundary breaches such as tissue wear and recurrent medical notations anchor the vulnerability squarely within the home's insulated confines, evoking a cover of silence woven by those closest to preserve facades of perfection. Who orchestrated this dual veil, blending outsider defection with internal suppression, remains the enigma that forensic timelines circle without resolution, as if the residence itself harbored compartments for secrets too layered for singular blame. The paradox intensifies under scrutiny of acts and behavioral cues, where the absence of forced entry aligns with familial orchestration, yet the genetic outlier dangles like a misplaced key, challenging probes to reconcile domestic echoes with external phantoms. Emotional undercurrents surged to the forefront in September 2016 when Burke Ramsey, then 29, shattered 2 decades of seclusion on the Dr. Phil stage, his composed demeanor cracking under the weight of accumulated scrutiny that had shadowed his every milestone from adolescence to adulthood. Seated across from the host in a sterile studio bathed in soft lighting, he recounted fragmented memories of that festive eve, denying any nocturnal wanderings while his voice carried subtle tremors that analysts later parsed for evasion, the interview unfolding as a raw unburdening marred by accusations of complicity in the cover. Viewers witnessed a man whose youth had been eclipsed by relentless headlines branding him the overlooked suspect, his privacy eroded by documentaries and books that recast sibling bonds as brewing tempests, transforming ordinary pursuits like college and career into gauntlets of public judgment. The session evoked profound pathos, highlighting how an innocent boy's world splintered under investigative glare, friendships severed and opportunities deferred amid the perpetual echo of suspicion, his narrative a testament to the collateral devastation where familial loyalty clashed against societal demands for closure. As clips circulated virally, they amplified the human fracture, underscoring the irreversible toll on survivors navigating a legacy of loss laced with doubt. Through these theoretical pivots and heartfelt disclosures, the saga endures as a mosaic of contested truths, where 2025's ongoing genetic pursuits spurred by John's advocacy and archival reevaluations hint at potential breakthroughs amid the fueled resurgence. As the millennium turned, casting a digital glow over fading analog files in Boulder's investigative vaults, whispers of sibling discord seeped into the discourse, birthing the Burke theory where a boy's impulsive strike amid pineapple remnants spiraled into parental concealment, his flashlight perhaps wielding unintended force that led to a head wound, followed by a hasty cord twist to mask the mishap. This notion drew from behavioral echoes of rivalry, where pageant crowns overshadowed a brother's quieter existence, yet it frayed under scrutiny of the elaborate demand letter's sophistication, far beyond a child's lexicon, prompting rebuttals that favored adult hands in the orchestration. By 2008, genetic profiles from undergarment traces shifted the spotlight outward, clearing the household through unmatched sequences that suggested an uninvited figure slipping through shadows, a clearance amplified by district proclamations yet tempered by debates over sample purity, as microscopic transfers could drift from factory floors or casual contacts rather than direct intrusion. These strands of doubt lingered like undisturbed cobwebs on a basement sill, challenging the narrative's pivot while fueling forums with pixelated speculations. Enter the 2024 Netflix Chronicle, its frames unfolding like a somber reel under Joe Berlinger's lens, where archival clips of holiday lights against interview close-ups, championing the external breach with tales of overlooked boot marks and window anomalies, portraying law enforcement stumbles as the true villain that eclipsed a prowler's trail. The series wove expert voices into a tapestrification, highlighting how media storms blinded probes to foreign markers, yet critics noted its selective edits that bypassed domestic fibers, leaving viewers in a haze of partial truths amid streaming glows. Contrasting this with paternal implication theories revealed forensic forks, where one path traced executive composure masking deeper impulses, escalating from boundary crosses to a fatal basement tableau, while sibling accident lines emphasized youthful chaos without malice, and outsider scenarios relied on biological outliers to overshadow household intimacy. A maternal thread complicated matters, material from her attire entangled in binding residues, suggesting proximity during assembly that defied pure invasion claims, perhaps indicating a protective intervention or direct role in the night's reconfiguration, a detail that bridged theories yet deepened divides. This fiber's persistence evoked questions of transfer versus intent, its presence a silent witness to movements unaccounted for in polished accounts, urging revaluations of timelines where grief and strategy intertwined. Beneath these constructs lay a core tension, where cleared profiles distanced the circle from immediate acts, but patterns of repeated vulnerabilities evident in tissue changes from multiple checkups anchored origins within the home's guarded walls, implying a veil drawn by familiars to preserve illusions of harmony. Who maintained this shroud? Balancing external deflection against internal silences remained elusive, as access records and subtle cues hinted at concealed routines shielded from outsiders, a riddle that forensic lenses strained to resolve amid evolving techniques. In 2016's televised confessional, a grown Burke faced the camera's unblinking eye, his words measured against the backdrop of Dr. Phil's probing gaze, recounting fragmented recollections of that eve while shadows of accusation etched lines on a face forever marked by childhood's abrupt end. This exchange peeled back layers of isolation, revealing how a boy's ordinary days morphed into a labyrinth of whispers and stares, friend-fractured by headlines that recast innocence as enigma, his path through education and work a gauntlet navigated under perpetual scrutiny's weight. The session stirred empathy for a life appended, where loyalty to kin clashed with public demands for transparency, his composure a shield against the emotional torrent that reshaped identity from sibling to symbol of unresolved sorrow. Fast-forwarding to 2025's forensic resurgence, Boulder authorities dispatched preserved artifacts including potential basement relics to labs for genetic genealogy scrutiny, a move spurred by familial advocacy and collaborative panels that reignited probes into cold embers. John Ramsey's petitions for legislative shifts echoed through corridors, proposing reviews for stagnant cases to empower kin in justice quests, while a late detective's ledger surfaced, cataloging figures that narrowed gazes inward by dismantling outsider alibis through chronological cross-checks. Interviews captured paternal resolve, his voice steady in studio lights as he heralded scientific strides, yet subtle pauses betrayed undercurrents of lingering unease over what revelations might unearth from archived depths. Daughter of a veteran sleuth carried forward legacies, sifting files with renewed vigor, blending heritage with modern assays to challenge inertia's grip. These advancements painted a mosaic of persistence, where each sequenced base pair promised to bridge gaps, yet ambiguities in origins versus artifacts persisted, echoing the saga's enduring pull on collective conscience. In the hushed corridors of that sprawling Boulder mansion, Where holiday decorations lingered like faded memories under the weight of an impending dawn, John Ramsey allegedly orchestrated a sequence of isolation that began with a quiet return to his daughter's room after the family had settled into sleep. He might have drawn her from the warmth of her bed with familiar whispers, guiding her downstairs through dimly lit passages lined with family photos that captured smiles now frozen in irony. This initial separation set the stage for intimate boundary violations, where traces later revealed in medical examinations suggested fresh intrusions with an object sourced from the home's lower level, leaving subtle marks that forensic experts would scrutinize for years. The progression escalated when resistance arose, leading to a forceful impact against her fragile form, fracturing bone beneath soft tissue in a moment of uncontrolled reaction. To conceal the outcome, a makeshift restraint tightened around her neck, crafted from household cord and a tool handle, restricting breath until stillness claimed the space. Finally, the staging unfolded in meticulous layers. A lengthy note penned on family stationery demanded a sum matching his recent financial gain, positioned on the staircase like a scripted prop, while the small body was relocated to a secluded basement corner, shrouded in a blanket to delay discovery. This narrative thread cements the undigested fruit in her system aligning with late-night activity, fibers from his attire in sensitive areas hinting at proximity, and the note's phrasing echoing movie dialogues. He might have known, yet it falters without a definitive piece of irrefutable proof, leaving theorists to circle the absence of that one unassailable link. Such a hypothesis, while weaving together the timeline's anomalies, exposes fractures in the legal framework that allowed the case to drift unresolved. District Attorney Alex Hunter, navigating the probe's complexities amid Boulder's affluent backdrop, chose not to pursue charges despite a grand jury's 1999 recommendation for indictment on accessory counts. His decision stemmed from concerns over evidentiary strength, but whispers of external pressures surfaced, tied to political alliances within Colorado's Democratic circles. Hunter's office maintained close ties with influential figures, including Ramsey's defense counsel, who held sway in party networks, potentially influencing the reluctance to advance a trial that could unravel high society facades. This hesitation contrasted sharply with outcomes in less privileged contexts, where prosecutors often moved swiftly on comparable suspicions without the buffer of elite resources. In cases involving families from modest means, like those in urban underprivileged areas, authorities frequently secured convictions on circumstantial grounds alone, unhindered by the same layers of doubt or deference afforded here. The disparity deepened as the investigation's early missteps unsecured perimeters permitting evidence tampering amplified perceptions of favoritism rooted in socioeconomic status. Hunter's public stance emphasized a pursuit free from bias, yet internal memos and former staff accounts hinted at strategic pauses that aligned with community sensitivities, sparing the prominent household from immediate courtroom exposure. Meanwhile, in analogous incidents among lower-income groups, such as child harm probes in crowded city dwellings, law enforcement deployed aggressive tactics, isolating suspects rapidly and leveraging media to build pressure for resolutions. These contrasts illuminated a system where wealth not only procured superior legal shields, but also softened prosecutorial edges, transforming potential accountability into prolonged ambiguity. The Ramseys' ability to retain top-tier representation further tilted the scales, enabling narrative control that evaded the relentless scrutiny faced by those without such means. As years layered upon the initial shock, this framework of inequity persisted, with Hunter's successor offices grappling with similar hesitations amid evolving science. The 2008 genetic findings, which distanced immediate kin from certain traces, reinforced the choice to withhold prosecution, yet they failed to address lingering indicators of prior vulnerabilities within the domestic sphere. In parallel, narratives from economically disadvantaged homicides revealed stark differences: rapid arrests based on witness statements alone, without the luxury of extended forensic debates or public exonerations. Such cases often concluded in pleas or trials driven by resource constraints, lacking the drawn-out appeals that wealth facilitated here. This systemic tilt fostered broader distrust, questioning whether justice bent toward affluence rather than facts. Recent developments in 2025, including advanced testing on preserved items, revived hopes for clarity, but they also underscored the enduring gap left by Hunter's pivotal restraint. John Ramsey's advocacy for genetic genealogy, voiced at conferences and in interviews, positioned him as a seeker of truth, yet it echoed against the backdrop of unprosecuted shadows. Comparatively, families in poverty-stricken scenarios rarely commanded such platforms to challenge investigative lulls, their pleas often lost in overburdened dockets. This ongoing saga highlighted how initial prosecutorial choices, potentially swayed by unseen networks, perpetuated divides that extended beyond one household to reflect societal rifts in equity. As laboratories analyzed fibers and sequences anew, the narrative circled back to that basement alcove, where answers remained elusive amid layers of privilege and pause. In reflecting on these interconnected threads, the theory's coherence clashed with the absence of conclusive validation, mirroring the justice system's selective rigor. Hunter's legacy, marked by caution that some viewed as compromise, contrasted vividly with the swift judgments in under-resourced communities, where closure arrived without the cushion of doubt. This enduring imbalance prompted introspection on legal fairness, as the case evolved through technological lenses yet retained its core mysteries. With each new examination, the possibility of resolution loomed. But so did the specter of entrenched disparities. Under the glaring spotlights of CrimeCon 2025 in Denver, where true crime enthusiasts gathered like pilgrims at a modern confessional, John Ramsey took the stage with a quiet resolve that cut through the murmurs of the crowd. His face, etched by nearly 3 decades of unyielding grief, reflected the weight of a father forever altered by loss, yet his voice carried a renewed spark as he addressed the audience alongside investigative journalist Paula Woodward. This convention, pulsing with panels on unsolved enigmas and forensic breakthroughs, became the backdrop for his latest revelations on the persistent quest for answers in his daughter's case. Attendees leaned forward in rapt silence as he detailed collaborative efforts with authorities, emphasizing how advanced testing could finally pierce the veil of ambiguity that had shrouded the investigation since that fateful holiday morning. The event transformed into a nexus of hope and scrutiny, where John's measured words evoked the documentary thrill of revelation, blending personal testimony with the cold precision of scientific promise. Shifting focus to the forensic forefront, Boulder Police Department officials confirmed in early September 2025 that dozens of preserved artifacts from the scene ranging from fabric remnants to household objects underwent re-examination at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation's state-of-the-art labs. These items, stored in evidentiary vaults for years, now faced scrutiny under enhanced protocols designed to extract minute biological signatures previously undetectable. Technicians employed touch analysis techniques, amplifying faint residues to construct detailed profiles that could link to broader databases. This initiative stemmed from John's January meeting with Police Chief Stephen Redfern, where he advocated for exhaustive retesting to honor the case's enduring legacy. The process unfolded methodically, with samples dispatched under chain of custody safeguards to prevent prior contamination pitfalls, marking a pivotal evolution from the initial probe's oversights into an era of meticulous molecular dissection. John's optimism shone brightest when discussing genetic genealogy, a method that traces familial connections through public ancestry platforms to unmask unknown contributors. In interviews following the convention, he expressed confidence that this approach would deliver closure, potentially identifying a perpetrator through relational matches rather than direct hits. This technique, proven in cases like the Golden State Killer's capture, offered a pathway to demystify the unidentified male traces isolated from intimate clothing years ago. Ramsey envisioned it as the key to validating an external involvement narrative, where an outsider's biological imprint could redirect suspicions away from domestic origins. His advocacy extended to legislative pushes, urging Governor Jared Polis to empower independent agencies for such analyses, bypassing departmental constraints that had stalled progress. This forward momentum infused the update with documentary tension, portraying science as both savior and storyteller in unraveling long-buried truths. Delving into the implications for long-standing theories, a positive match confirming an intruder's profile would dismantle the paternalism hypothesis at its core. That model, which posits a sequence of seclusion leading to intimate harm, fatal neck pressure, and subsequent concealment efforts, relies heavily on the absence of foreign markers to sustain internal culpability claims. Should genealogy yield a viable suspect, perhaps a distant relative of an overlooked visitor or neighborhood figure, the structure crumbles, exonerating household dynamics and shifting blame to a calculated breach during the night's quiet hours. Forensic experts anticipate this outcome could prompt archival reviews of alibis from 1996 acquaintances, transforming vague leads into actionable pursuits. The revelation would echo through legal circles, potentially reopening grand jury considerations with fresh evidence, while emotionally validating John's narrative of external savagery invading their sanctuary. Conversely, if retesting yields no external correlations or reinforces ambiguous transfers, the veil of doubt thickens around familial elements, amplifying whispers of concealed patterns within the home. The unidentified residue, often cited as an outsider's hallmark, might reveal itself as incidental contact from manufacturing or secondary handling, leaving the intimate violation indicators, such as recent Tisson disruptions and prior medical notations of boundary issues, to point inescapably inward. This scenario would heighten scrutiny on unaccounted timelines, like John's early morning solitude, and material traces linking to parental attire, suggesting orchestrated deflections rather than random incursion. Investigators might pivot to psychological profiles of suppressed vulnerabilities, where repeated exposures escape detection amid affluent routines. The emotional fallout intensifies here, as John's hope confronts the specter of deeper complicity, turning his optimism into a poignant mask over unresolved fears. This binary forensic fork underscores the case's fragility, where each lab result holds the power to rewrite histories etched in public memory. Boulder PD's handling of over 100 new tips in May 2025, combined with these tests, signals a comprehensive resurgence, yet past hesitations linger as cautionary notes. John's daughter-in-law and extended kin, present at CrimeCon, echoed his sentiments, their presence a testament to generational persistence against institutional inertia. The updates evoke a cinematic montage of perseverance, intercutting archival footage of holiday cheer with sterile lab close-ups, humanizing the science's stakes. For Ramsey, these developments represent not just technical advances but a bridge to reclaiming innocence lost, his voice cracking subtly during panel discussions to reveal the raw underbelly of enduring sorrow. Broader societal reflections emerge from this juncture, highlighting how privilege intersects with investigative evolution. John's platform at conventions amplifies calls for equity in cold case resolutions, contrasting with under-resourced probes where families lack such advocacy. The genetic genealogy push, while innovative, raises ethical quandaries about privacy in ancestry databases, yet in this context, it symbolizes a father's unyielding fight against silence. As samples cycle through sequencers, the air hums with potential, each base pair from the past demanding reckoning. Woodward's insights during the event added layers, dissecting how early procedural lapses compounded ambiguities, now addressed through collaborative reforms. In the quiet aftermath of CrimeCon's applause, John retreated to reflections on legacy, his optimism a beacon amid shadows that have defined his later years. The retesting's dual possibilities, vindication or intensification, mirror the documentary's narrative arc, building suspense toward an uncertain climax. Families like his navigate this limbo with quiet dignity, their updates fueling a collective yearning for finality. In the fading light of a Colorado autumn afternoon, John Ramsey sat in his modest living room, surrounded by faded photographs that captured moments of a life interrupted, his hands trembling slightly as he flipped through yellowed news clippings from decades past. At 81, his once commanding frame had grown frail, marked by the relentless passage of time and the unyielding burden of unresolved loss. He spoke softly to visitors about his daily routines, which now revolved around advocacy calls and meetings with experts, each one a small battle in a war that had outlasted his youth. The lines etched deep into his forehead told stories of sleepless nights, where memories of his daughter's laughter mingled with the echo of unanswered questions. Despite the physical toll, his eyes retained a spark of determination, fueled by the hope that modern science might finally provide the vindication he sought. This persistence defined his later years, transforming a grieving parent into a symbol of enduring resolve against institutional barriers. The emotional weight extended beyond personal suffering, seeping into the fabric of his remaining relationships and daily existence. John's second marriage offered some solace, yet conversations often circled back to the events of that winter day, creating invisible walls within his home. He described moments of solitude where he revisited old letters and journals, each word a reminder of the family unit shattered forever. Friends noted his quieter demeanor at gatherings, where holiday decorations triggered subtle withdrawals into introspection. This prolonged anguish highlighted the human cost of ambiguity in high-profile tragedies, where closure remained elusive despite public scrutiny. His voice cracked during interviews when recounting the initial shock, revealing layers of vulnerability beneath the stoic exterior he maintained for years. Society's gaze amplified this private torment, turning it to a mirror for broader issues of fairness and protection. Delayed resolutions in such matters exposed flaws in the system, where resources and influence dictated the pace of inquiries. In this instance, nearly 3 decades passed without charges, leaving families trapped in limbo while less prominent cases advanced swiftly through courts. This disparity bred cynicism among observers, who questioned whether economic status shielded certain individuals from thorough examination. Children in affluent environments faced unique risks, often hidden behind facades of perfection that discouraged external intervention. Statistics from child welfare reports underscored this point, showing elevated instances of overlooked harm in households projecting stability. Lessons emerged from this narrative, emphasizing the fragility of young lives even within seemingly secure settings. Perfect families, with their polished exteriors and structured routines, sometimes concealed dynamics that allowed vulnerabilities to fester unnoticed. Pediatric records in similar situations revealed patterns of repeated concerns dismissed as minor, mirroring broader trends where societal expectations prioritized image over intervention. Advocacy groups highlighted the need for oversight, arguing that early signs demanded proactive responses to prevent escalation. This reflection prompted calls for reformed policies, ensuring equal application of safeguards regardless of background. Recent developments in 2025 brought a glimmer of progress amid the stagnation, as authorities dispatched preserved materials for advanced analysis at specialized facilities. John expressed renewed faith during a public appearance, detailing how genetic mapping techniques promised to trace unidentified elements to potential sources. This step followed collaborative discussions with officials, aiming to cross-reference profiles against expansive databases. The process involved meticulous extraction of minute residues from fabrics and tools, each sample handled with precision to avoid past errors. Experts anticipated results that could either confirm external involvement or redirect focus inward, altering the trajectory of long-standing assumptions. Emotional undercurrents surfaced in John's advocacy, where he pushed for legislative changes to empower relatives in dormant investigations. At a convention earlier that year, he shared updates on re-examined artifacts, his words carrying the weight of accumulated frustration yet laced with cautious anticipation. This effort connected to a late detective-compiled list of figures warranting review, narrowing possibilities through eliminated timelines. A successor investigator continued this work, sifting through archives with fresh perspectives inherited from prior efforts. These actions underscored the human drive for answers, transforming abstract procedures into personal milestones. Social implications rippled outward, critiquing how media portrayals influence perceptions of accountability. Broadcasts often sensationalized details, shaping opinions that pressured officials while overlooking systemic delays. In contrast, underprivileged communities experienced expedited processes, lacking the buffers that extended this ordeal. This inequality fueled debates on reform, advocating for standardized timelines to mitigate such disparities. Child advocacy emphasized preventive measures, urging awareness of subtle indicators in all environments to foster safer spaces. The narrative's persistence revealed deeper truths about resilience in the face of adversity. John's journey illustrated how one individual's fight could inspire broader movements, challenging complacency in unresolved matters. His public statements in recent months highlighted collaborative strides, including partnerships with forensic teams to apply innovative methods. This momentum built on earlier clearances, yet left room for re-evaluation of lingering anomalies. Observers noted the emotional release in his expressions during these updates, as if each step lightened the invisible load carried for so long. Shifting perspectives to societal vulnerabilities, the account served as a cautionary tale for guardians everywhere. Environments projecting flawlessness often masked internal strains, where young members bore unseen burdens. Reports from protective services detailed comparable scenarios, where external appearances delayed necessary aid. This realization prompted educational initiatives, teaching communities to recognize and report potential issues promptly. The broader lesson reinforced the importance of communal vigilance, ensuring no facade obscured genuine needs. In a non-linear return to the dimly lit lower level of that residence, where dust motes danced in slivers of light filtering through a small window, the space remained frozen in time like a preserved exhibit in a museum of mysteries. Cobwebs clung to corners, undisturbed since the initial search, while faint outlines on the floor evoked the outline of a small form once placed there. Echoes of footsteps from that morning seemed to resonate against the concrete walls, each one a silent witness to the sequence of events unfolding in the early hours. The air held a musty chill, redolent of stored decorations and forgotten belongings, as if the room itself guarded secrets etched into its structure. If those walls could articulate the truths they absorbed, what revelations might they offer about the movements in the darkness, the whispers exchanged, or the decisions made in haste? This invitation to ponder the unspoken draws minds toward further exploration, encouraging delves into accounts that dissect the intricacies with depth. For those seeking comprehensive insights, Lawrence Schiller's volume on the matter provides a detailed chronicle, weaving together timelines and perspectives into a cohesive examination worth pursuing. In the quiet aftermath of a tragedy that reshaped a family and riveted a nation, the Ramsey case lingers like an unfinished script, its final pages unwritten despite decades of relentless pursuit. John Ramsey, now in his twilight years, carries the weight of a father's unyielding quest, his weathered voice echoing through convention halls and media studios, championing scientific advances that might finally name the shadow behind a holiday's ruin. Each retested artifact, each genetic sequence analyzed in sterile labs, holds the promise of piercing the fog that cloaked that Boulder basement, yet also risks deepening the enigma with inconclusive whispers. The emotional toll weaves through his days, a tapestry of hope threaded with the dread of revelations that could redefine legacies. Society watches, transfixed, as this saga exposes fault lines in justice, where wealth and status tilt scales, leaving vulnerable children in even the most polished homes at risk of unseen harms.